Good morning. Thank you for joining us for our California Hydrogen Policy Series. My name is Ben Zong, and I'm the Online Communications Manager for the California Fiscal Partnership. This is the first of several briefings that we'll be hosting, and we'll cover in today's briefing, California in a global hydrogen economy. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Today's webinar will be recorded. The webinar recording and the presentation slides will be posted later next week. Once they are posted, we will be sending out an email with a link to where those resources are located. During the webinar, everyone will be muted. However, we encourage you to use the GoToWebinar questions feature to ask any questions during the webinar. Once the panelists' presentations are over, we will have a short time at the end for a Q&A session. During the webinar, the panelists will also have their cameras turned on. You have the capability to change the settings on your side to see the camera as well as the presentation. You're also able to turn off the camera settings if you want to. The California Fiscal Partnership is a collaboration of over 50 industry and government organizations. Our goal is to bring organizations together to work on expanding the market for hydrogen and fuel cell electric vehicles and to help create a cleaner future. And so with that, I'm going to pass it to Bill Elrick, the California Fiscal Partnership Executive Director. Bill?
Great, thank you, Ben. Welcome everyone to the first of an ongoing series of policy-related briefings on hydrogen and the role that it can play in California. We're really excited to offer this series along with our partners, the California Hydrogen Business Council and the California Hydrogen Coalition. My name is Bill Elrick. I'm the Executive Director of the California Fuel Cell Partnership, and today I'll serve as a moderator and facilitator for this briefing. For this, we brought together a really exciting mix of speakers from different parts of the world with very different perspectives on the state of hydrogen in their regions and globally, and I'm looking forward to a very productive conversation. What we're really hoping through these briefings today is that we can gain some insights into how California can further lead in this area and where we can continue to be a climate ally and a leader in support of this growing global hydrogen economy. So I'd like to do a quick panelist introduction, and then we'll hand it over. In order, we're going to first hear from Eleni Kounalakis, who was sworn in as the 50th Lieutenant Governor of California, which made her the very first woman elected to Lieutenant Governor in California. Previously, she served as a U.S. ambassador to the Republic of Hungary under President Barack Obama. And before that, she was president of one of California's most respected housing development firms, where she worked for nearly 2 decades. In addition to her duties as Lieutenant Governor, she's also California's representative for internal affairs and trade, and was appointed by Governor Newsom, I believe, last year. Next, we'll hear from Tudor Constantinescu, and he's the principal advisor at the European Commissioner and Directorate-General for Energy. He coordinates the different activities related to the steering use of structural funds for energy priorities, as well as initiatives related to hydrogen and storage in the energy system. He's a member of the governing board of the Fuel Cells and Hydrogen Joint Undertaking, and this is a unique private-public partnership supporting research, technical development, and demonstration activities in fuel cell and hydrogen energy technologies in Europe. Following, we'll hear from Fernando de Sisternes. He's an energy specialist with World Bank's Energy Sector Management Assistant Program, where he leads the Green Hydrogen Support Program. He's the co-author of the report Green Hydrogen in Developing Countries, which highlights green hydrogen opportunities in developing countries. And to round us off, we will hear from Norihiko Saeki, who serves as the Executive Director of Japan's External Trade Organization, or JETRO, in Los Angeles, and coordinates the collaborations between the US and Japanese industries in the area of innovation and investment. Norihiko contributes to solving the social issues in California and the US by user-oriented technology with Japanese industries. In this capacity, he's responsible for the overall strategy and execution on innovation policy and industries collaboration, especially in hydrogen energy, as well as water, smart cities, vehicles, aerospace, and healthcare. He also serves as special advisor to the Minister of Economy, Trade, and Industry of Japan, and is tasked to recommending the policy options, as well as promoting collaboration at the government level. So with that, quick introduction for each, because I want to really get into these conversations and hear from everyone. I'd like to turn it over to the Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you so much, Bill, for that introduction. And thank you to the California Fuel Cell Partnership for inviting me, along with all of our other extraordinary guests and all of you out there watching, for this hydrogen policy series discussion. I'd like to officially welcome our participants from around the world, Dr. Constantinescu and Dr. Sisternes, as well as Mr. Saeki. Welcome virtually to California. I wish you were here in person, but hopefully we'll be able to do that in the not too distant future. As all of you, I'm sure, already know, that California prides ourselves on being a leader on combating climate change in so many ways. But our landmark legislation is our 2045 goals of carbon neutrality and a 100% carbon-free electrical grid. In many different ways, we are working on achieving these goals every single day. And of course, tackling emissions from the transportation sector is absolutely essential in order for us to be able to meet our goals. 41% of California's greenhouse gas emissions come from vehicles, 41%. And another 11% of our greenhouse gas emissions come from the production of fuels which power those vehicles. So in order for us to make a meaningful change in our emissions levels, we simply must tackle the emissions coming from our cars and trucks and the processing of the fuel that power them. A few weeks ago, during Climate Week, Governor Newsom issued another very important part of reaching these goals, the executive order around zero emission vehicles, which mandates that by 2035, 100% of the sales of all new cars and trucks in California will be zero emission vehicles. And by 2045, 100% of medium and heavy duty vehicles will also be mandated to be ZEVs. And I just want to acknowledge that Governor Newsom's policies build now on many years and a bipartisan approach in our state to tackling climate change. Governor Schwarzenegger, many of you remember, talked about the hydrogen highway in California and famously converted his Hummer to being run on hydrogen fuel. Governor Brown mandated that 1.5 million ZEVs will be on California's roads by 2025. And over the last 10 years, California has invested over $300 million in hydrogen vehicle rebates, in the construction of fueling stations, bus purchases, and research and development. And I also want to note that it is no small thing that when California acts, things begin to change. California is the largest consumer market in the United States. When we put these kinds of goals in place and mandate change, the market responds. Currently, California is leading the nation in electric vehicle manufacturing and infrastructure. In fact, electric vehicles are now the state's #1 export. We are home to 34 electric vehicle manufacturers, and 50% of all the electric vehicle purchases in the United States are here in California. That means more than 500,000 electric vehicles are already on the roads. Now, while electric vehicles have seen tremendous growth, hydrogen fuel cell vehicles are really poised to take off. And this is for several reasons. First of all, it is undeniable that there are extraordinary environmental and health benefits of hydrogen fuel and powered vehicles. It's also very versatile. We can use hydrogen to decarbonize difficult sectors like long-distance freight transportation, aviation, and industrial processes. And of course, like all renewables, it's gotten more affordable and less expensive. We are looking at using excess wind and solar to be able to be produced and purchased in order to produce green hydrogen. These are all really important and exciting developments. And the bottom line is that we all know that the technology works. Now it's about scaling up. So currently, if you're driving on California's highways, you might see a hydrogen fuel cell car. There are about 7,000 currently on our roads. And we have already put in place 44 fueling stations with another dozen in development. And we are working toward a goal of 50,000 hydrogen light-duty vehicles and at least 1,000 fueling stations by 2030. So for more of the detailed information on California's plan to develop more zero-emission vehicles in our state and achieve our goals, I encourage you all to look at the current released plan by the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, GoBiz. They released it about 2 weeks ago, and there is even more information for those of you, and I understand more than 400 people signed up for today. So for all of you who are looking at opportunities, trying to have a sense of where you might fit in to California reaching these goals, I encourage you all to go online to GoBiz and to read through their strategy for more information. The bottom line is that exciting developments in hydrogen are coming, and California is one of the places that is very much at the forefront. So I'm very eager to continue to hear from others, our experts from the World Bank, European Union, and Japan, who are here today to really help enlighten us of what more we can do. And again, I just want to thank everyone for joining us and welcome you all virtually to California today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for those words, Lieutenant Governor. As Ben switches over, I believe we'll hear next from Tudor Constantinescu.
Hello. Thank you very much, Governor, for the introduction. Thank you for the invitation to be with you here today. I'm extremely pleased and happy to share with you some of our thoughts. And first of all, about our plans, how to integrate hydrogen into the energy transition. As you all may know, it's a challenging time, and for all of us, and we have to get out of this sanitary and health crisis, of the COVID crisis. But we think that this is an opportunity to use the Green Deal and to steer our investments in areas which will help both economic recovery and the energy transition. Next slide, please. You know that for Europe, one of the top priority, and maybe the first priority announced by President von der Leyen for the Commission, it was published in December 2019, is a European Green Deal. The European Green Deal is actually an action plan to boost the efficient use of resources by moving to a clean, circular economy, and also to restore biodiversity and cut pollution in Europe. The plan outlines investments and financing tools available. It explains how to ensure also a just and inclusive transition. We have regions which we don't want to leave behind, the regions who have to move from coal to cleaner forms of energy. We have islands which also have vulnerabilities which needs to be particularly addressed. And as the EU aims to become climate neutral in 2050, we propose a European climate law to turn this political commitment into legal obligations. The Green Deal, I would say, has, from the perspective of the energy sector, two main features. One is to accelerate investments, to have more capex now in order to reduce emissions already by 2030. And on the other hand, to have more integrated and more comprehensive approach. And in this way, we can ensure also a stronger recovery. Next slide, please. To give you a bit of an illustration of where we are, And you will have all these slides. I'm not asking to read all of them, but just to understand that expect the demand for energy to decrease due to the energy efficiency measures we take in particular, but we also expect a change of the energy carriers. And if now hydrogen is negligible, we see towards 2050 how hydrogen will start to play an important role. And there are various models and estimates, but it's becoming a significant source of energy and also a feedstock for industry. Furthermore, towards 2050, what we see is that the share of electricity in the final energy consumption will increase. It's now in Europe about 23%. It will go towards 50%. But you'll have a massive part of the final energy consumption, which will not be in electricity, will be in molecules, being gas or being liquid fuels. And what we aim in order to achieve carbon neutrality is to decarbonize gradually also these gases and liquid fuels. And hydrogen is a key enabler for that. Direct hydrogen, synthetic methane, can be synthetic fuels, and these are all options we look into the future. And the graphs here try to illustrate also this transition, for example, of the gas from natural gas to more decarbonized gases for biomethane, but also hydrogen and synthetic gases will have a growing role to play. Next slide, please. It is actually in this context that this summer we came with two important strategies. So the energy system integration, where we tried really to put all these pieces better together, because with all these higher shares of renewable electricity, we thought how to better decarbonize other sectors. But there are also other value chains, and in particular, for example, for direct use of electricity, for heat pumps and other areas. At the same time, however, for in particular the gas part, we see the key enabling role of hydrogen and for decarbonizing carbon-intensive industries and heavy-duty transport. And therefore came with this strategy, which looks at the investment agenda, boosting demand and supply, developing infrastructure, but also tackles research and innovation and international cooperation. We also launched a Hydrogen Alliance on the same day, bringing together already over 800 stakeholders, all major companies, but also research institutes and governments across Europe, willing to work together to identify projects, what we call important projects of common European interest across Europe, and to value the potential we have across Europe for hydrogen and for integrating, this is a main priority for us, renewables into the energy system in a cost-effective way. Next slide, please. Therefore, the strategy comes with a number of milestones, and we see for 2024, for 2030 already, for 2050, how we see this phased approach. Now, to increase capacities, in particular for electrolyzers, to 6 gigawatts by 2024, where we aim to reach 1 million tons of renewable hydrogen production in Europe, to decarbonize the hydrogen production which we have now and which is currently used in the chemical sector, and to replace the so-called gray hydrogen with low carbon renewable hydrogen. From 2025 to 2030, to increase its capacity to 40 gigawatts of renewable electrolyzers and 10 million tons of hydrogen production. From 2030 onwards, renewable hydrogen will be deployed at a certainly larger scale. Next slide, please. Speaking about these targets, they come with an investment agenda. This is a reference I made before to the importance for recovery now. Yeah, the Green Deal was there before, but it fits more than ever into the idea of economic recovery and in making more investments now and avoiding in this way later on stranded assets and avoiding also lock-in effects. So if you see for hydrogen, we estimate about 24 to 40 billion euros to invest in electrolyzers, in production of renewable hydrogen, but this will trigger investments in additional renewable capacities. And we speak here about 100 gigawatts of renewables, which would be between 200 and 340 billion euros. We also need to invest in the hydrogen infrastructure and also in the transport and in the end-use sectors. An illustration is here about steel. And for this, Europe came with a very strong recovery plan, which is going to be in addition to the what we call multi-annual financial framework. And it's about, in total, for the next period, to about 1.8 trillion euros. Next slide, please. Back to the hydrogen objectives here and how to foster the demand. We need clearly to provide an enabling regulatory framework, and this is the role of European energy policy. It is important to boost demand in end-use sectors, to have industrial applications in the short term to reduce the carbon-intensive hydrogen, in a second phase to replace fossil fuels at feedstock for the steel industry. On mobility, we see first opportunities in local transport, heavy-duty transport, but we are going towards maritime and aviation, and here the role of synthetic fuels will also grow in a longer-term perspective. Demand-side support policies are also necessary, and we think about introducing maybe targets for renewable hydrogen in certain end-use sectors. All this is currently being under analysis, and I will come back to this because we need to review the existing legislation in order to achieve the more ambitious Green Deal targets, in particular the 2030, 55% greenhouse gas emission reductions. So it is in this context we need to make sure that we speak about hydrogen we have a common denominator, and we are going to put in place a certification scheme to make sure that we speak about renewable hydrogen or low carbon hydrogen, and also gradually to develop the market, a EU-wide market in which to have also trading hubs for hydrogen. Next slide, please. And this is part of the supply and infrastructure, which is very important to be put in place. We need a coordinated approach, which the alliance, which I mentioned before, will bring in together with member states and the regions, and eventually support schemes before hydrogen becomes fully competitive. Therefore, we'll need to transport hydrogen gradually. So initially, we think of industrial clusters, certain areas like ports where we can have better linking the production of, in particular, renewable hydrogen and the end use in industrial applications. But then we need also to link these centers across Europe. And we also need, as we may not have enough renewable hydrogen produced in Europe, we need to develop import infrastructure, maybe to convert some of LNG terminals in the future. So all this will have to be adapted. We also need to make better use of the existing infrastructure, for example, for gas. And in certain countries, there are already plans for certain gas infrastructure to be repurposed for hydrogen. In other cases, it may be the use of biomethane at a local level, and then gradually to combine also with opportunities for synthetic methane, yes, with carbon capture for industry initially, and later on maybe from the air. Depends, of course, also how the technology evolves, but we see, like we have seen for renewables, like we have seen for batteries, a rapid falling down of the capex of technologies, and more renewables will have. We know that in the cost of hydrogen, about 60% is actually the price of electricity. So more cheap renewables will have more hydrogen, renewable hydrogen will make a business case. Therefore, we also revise the 10E regulations, corridors of transporting electricity at European level, and also the 10T, and we try to bring this with a certain project of common interest status. Next slide, please. And to make all these things possible, of course, we have to build on what we have done so far on research and innovation. And research and innovation is very important in all the areas. It's important, first of all, of course, for the electrolyzers. We try to make larger and more effective, of course. We started 10, 15 years ago, 10 kilowatt electrolyzers. We have now 10 megawatt electrolyzers in operation. We have 20 megawatt under construction. And this year, under the Green Deal call for research, we foresee a 100 megawatt electrolyzer. This is very important development in the area of hydrogen production. But we also look at the applications in infrastructure, as I have mentioned, to adapt the terminals of LNG, to distribute and store, to repurpose the gas infrastructure. We also need to look at the end-use applications, multi-megawatt fuel cells, in particular for maritime applications. We also look at the cross-cutting areas, which are important for all of us, in particular the critical raw materials, the improved safety standards, and the environmental impact and sustainability. Next slide, please. And in this journey, of course, we are not alone. So I'm mentioning here the international dimension. The international dimension, which is clearly very important, and where we see, first of all, with the neighboring countries and the potential we see in North African countries, but also in the Eastern countries for renewable hydrogen for Europe to eventually develop opportunities to produce and import. On the other hand, it's clear that there are global markets developing. There are global markets, and we have heard recently big economies moving towards decarbonization, and also major hydrogen suppliers of this world moving into producing and exporting more renewable hydrogen from Australia to Chile, from synthetic fuels in South Africa to other opportunities across the globe. So it's clear that we need to cooperate with all these partners. We have a well-established, in particular on research and innovation since long time, under the International Partnership for Hydrogen Economy, cooperation established with the US, and it has to become hydrogen a stronger dimension of our dialogue we have in this energy US Energy Council. So hydrogen will become gradually a more important component also of the international trade, but then we need to know what is renewable hydrogen. So the issue of certification, we try to address this in the International Partnership for Hydrogen Economy to define the certification, the methodologies for calculating the carbon footprint, and at the same time, in initiatives like the Clean Energy Ministerial, which we co-chair with the US and Canada and Japan, to ensure deployment of these technologies in all these big segments where are important for supporting further development and deployment of technologies, ensuring an effective transition to low carbon economy. Next slide, please. And in doing this, of course, I refer briefly now here to the Alliance, which is what I started in a way with, because it's important to bring all the actors together. And this is what we have tried. And less than 2 weeks ago, we had this big week of hydrogen in Europe. And it was a period when also the Alliance was launched, and we have over 800 companies interested to invest in hydrogen across Europe, because every billion of investments creates also 10,000 additional jobs. And we see big opportunities to make hydrogen an energy carrier and a bridging element in the energy transition. So I think my time is over, and I thank you very much for your attention. Happy to stay with you for the next of the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's some incredible views there with a real big package of strategies, investment, and really the market needs and opportunities. So as Ben pulls up some additional slides, we'll next hear from Fernando de Sisternes.
Thank you, Bill, and thanks to the California Fuel Cell Partnership and Lieutenant Governor Kounalakis for the invitation today to participate in this Hydrogen Policy Forum. My name is Fernando de Sisternes, and I work at the World Bank's Energy Sector Management Systems Program, where we are focusing on supporting developing countries with technical assistance to inform their national strategies and also to inform World Bank financed operations. I'm going to be talking today a little bit about why we need to shift the focus of green hydrogen to developing countries, and I will also summarize some of the opportunities that we see for green hydrogen to play a role in developing countries. So in general, something that we know already is that the world is not on track to deliver climate change goals. We've been doing a very good job decarbonizing the electric power sector with investments in renewable electricity over the last 2 decades, and more recently with investments in energy storage, which is pivotal to integrate that renewable electricity into grids. But we still have 75% of the greenhouse gas emissions coming from sectors outside of power, what we call hard to abate sectors, and that includes transport, industry, agriculture, and the chemical industry. So deeper actions are needed in these hard to abate sectors to decarbonize the economy. The good news is that electrolyzers and fuel cells are much more efficient today. They have longer duration, they have lower cost, and then the rapid decline in renewable electricity combined with those technology improvements in the end allow us to produce green hydrogen that can be cost competitive with other types of hydrogen or with other fossil fuels. So in the context of developing countries, domestic green hydrogen can allow to decarbonize industry, to offer long-term solutions, to integrate more renewables in the context of mini-grids in particular. You can remember that we still have 700 million people that don't have access to electricity, and mini-grids play a very key role in electrifying this population. Also very relevant in island locations, mostly relying on polluting and expensive diesel power. We can also reduce the reliance on expensive imported fuels, and we can produce future fuels like ammonia and methanol that can help to decarbonize the maritime sector. We can mitigate the seasonal variability of renewables, and that's one of the key bottlenecks in integrating large-scale renewable capacity into power grids. And then finally, we can also provide reliable power for critical infrastructures like telecommunication towers. Now, these are all good news, and the chemical industry and the petrochemical industry have been using hydrogen for many decades, but there's a number of deployment challenges that need to be taken into account if we want to scale up green hydrogen in a sustainable way. In particular, there is specific knowledge and capacity that is required to ensure the safe production of storage, transport, and use of hydrogen. There's a shortage of qualified engineers who can install, monitor, operate, and maintain fuel cell and hydrogen systems. So there's a significant effort required to increase the human capital to develop these type of projects. Also, hydrogen technologies are very capital intensive, and we need further cost reductions and efficiency gains to scale up and make them cost competitive with many other fossil fuel sources. It's important as well to remember that producing green hydrogen requires a lot of water, and we need to take into account the water energy nexus and desalination requirements in order to sustainably procure the water needed for all these projects. Another important aspect is that there's a lot of strategic infrastructure decisions that need to be decided. For instance, countries will have to decide between developing pipeline infrastructures or using maritime transportation of ammonia across multiple locations to enable exports. Finally, because these assets are so capex intensive, we need to make sure that their utilization is maximized. So in order to do that, it's important that countries develop national strategies that look at all the sectors and understand very well how these components can play a role and their utilization can be maximized. The sector of transport is also extremely important, and this is very relevant to highly polluted cities. This is an example in Costa Rica, where the local authorities deployed a fleet of fuel cell buses, and this is just an example that could also be replicated in many other locations in the region. Similarly, our colleagues before mentioned decarbonizing maritime shipping. This is a key area in the near to medium term. It has a very negative impact, not just on carbon emissions, but also on sea wildlife. The maritime shipping sector is responsible for 3% of global emissions, and it's a huge opportunity in countries with deep sea ports to develop green hydrogen facilities that also produce green ammonia or green methanol to power these ships. In the case of California, I think this would be relevant for the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach that right now I think carry over 20% of the total trade in North America. Green hydrogen has also a huge potential for industrial processes, in particular for substituting coal in the production of steel, and also in processes requiring high heat, high temperature heat. And this is a project in India that is using hydrogen to decarbonize steel production. So all in all, green hydrogen can bring enormous opportunities for decarbonization and for developing countries. And I encourage everyone to download this report that we have online, and it's the result of 2 years of research where we describe to the detail all these applications, as well as what has changed in the hydrogen industry over the last few decades. And I look forward to engaging with many of you in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fernando. And now we will hear from Norihiko Saeki. Ben's pulling up slides now. Thank you, Ben.
Hello, my name is Norihiko Saeki. It is my great honor to join this panel with very distinguished guests, including Honorable Lieutenant Governor Kounalakis. And today I'm very happy to share the Japanese vision and actions toward a hydrogen-based economy. And my name is Norihiko Saeki. I'm Executive Director of the JETRO Los Angeles. Our primary task is to expand the business with between the U.S. companies and any other companies with Japanese industries. And at the same time, I work as a special advisor to the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry in Japan. And in this capacity, we promote international cooperation on the hydrogen and other environmental projects. And today, I'd like to introduce some of the Japanese policy backgrounds about toward the hydrogen policy society and the applications, the current applications of the hydrogen in Japan. At the same time, Japanese industries are trying to sustain the decarbonization of the California systems, including transportation and hydrogen production, and at the same time, power generation. So at first, I'd like to touch the hydrogen society. In Japan, in 2013, a Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Strategy Commission was established. So in other words, we have a long history to develop the hydrogen policy and R&D program. And in 2017, we established a basic hydrogen strategy. Japan is first nation to formulate a national strategy in the world. In this strategy, we developed the first comprehensive national strategy to formulate the demand and some supply of the hydrogen system. And in 2018, we hosted the first hydrogen energy ministerial meeting, which is taking place in Tokyo. And here's the role of the hydrogen in the Japanese policy. As you may know, the chemical formula of the hydrogen is H2. So the meaning totally free from the carbon. So it's a clean and safe. And at the same time, we also promoting the utilization of the hydrogen based on the green hydrogen. and from the renewable energies. So it can also serve as a national security. And we also try to contribute to electrification of any kind of systems. The transportation is an example, a good example, but also we also promote the utilization of the hydrogen to promote the electrification of the houses and the buildings, and at the same time infrastructure, especially the power generation and the equipment in the port or transportation. And we also promote the decarbonization of the thermal power generation. And so in California, we promote decarbonization of the gas-based thermal power plant, which is promoted by LADWP. And this is, I think, very interesting, and it's very also important for California. The hydrogen can enhance the grid reliability to stabilize the power supply based on the renewable energy. And so I think that hydrogen is now being developed in both various uses. And in this context, the basic hydrogen strategy is really important to bridge the demand and supply and to promote the investment from the private sectors. And here is a numerical targets of the Japanese hydrogen strategy. So we not only developing the demands of the use case of the hydrogen, but also we also promote the expansion of the supply of the hydrogen. Currently, the domestic hydrogen is mostly produced by natural gas, but we are just trying to demonstrate the green hydrogen production since this year. And we try to utilize international collaboration about hydrogen supply chains. And at the same time, we also promote domestic power to gas technology. And here's the recent progresses in Japan. The left side, this is examples of the hydrogen production supply. And in Japan, the current refueling station is more than 130 stations. And at the same time, we also promote green hydrogen production. And here's examples of the Fukushima hydrogen research field to demonstrate green hydrogen production. And this is also we provided to the Tokyo Olympic Games. And so through this project, we also like to promote lower the cost of the electrolyzer. And next is the transportation. And here are the examples of the application of transportations. The passenger car is the most famous, most available usage. And the next one is the buses, and the solar is used in the, to support the Tokyo Olympic Games. And at the same time, the hydrogen is very highly expected to utilize in the heavy-duty trucks. And at the same time, train is also one of the expecting use case. And the JR East is now trying to develop the Hibari with the help of the Toyota Motors and Hitachi. And sea vessel is also one of the most important decarbonized area in the world. So Japan is also promoted the development of the fleet. This is an example of the Nippon Yusen Corporation. And then actually, we just try to move forward this effort to expand. And the right side, here's examples of the home and building electrification. We are promoting the Ener farm system to provide the electricity through the fuel cell to the home level and at the building level. And because in Japan, I think unfortunately the solar power is a little bit unstable. So we try to utilize not only the PV energy, but also fuel cell-based systems to provide electricity. And the next one is grid reliability. As I mentioned, unfortunately, the renewable energy is unstable compared to the California because the weather is very changeable in Japan. So we utilize not only battery but also hydrogen and fuel cell systems. To ensure the stable supply of the electricity toward the local grids. And I think this could be one of the good solutions for the PSPs, which is just happening in the public safety power shutdown, which is frequently happens in California. And at the same time, the fuel cell vehicles could be one of the sources for the electricity for the disaster relief. And actually, the Toyota Motors and Honda is now collaborating to the disaster to provide electricity while the disaster is happening. Then actually, which this system is used in the last year. And this page shows the examples of the business collaboration between the Japanese companies and California companies and the California government. And we have a wide variety of programs to develop these projects. And one of the most largest collaboration is the refueling station. First element fuel is the largest provider of the hydrogen fueling station, and Japan Bank for the International Cooperation, and Mitsui has decided to invest here. And at the same time, the Iwatani Corporation, which is the second largest hydrogen producer, has decided to invest in California to provide hydrogen. And regarding the hydrogen production from biogas, the Hitachi Zosen Innover has decided to invest in their biogas-based hydrogen plant in Lancaster. And I think the transportation is very, very famous, and it's a typical application for the hydrogen. So the Toyota Motors and the Honda are already invested and provided here in California. And currently, Port of Los Angeles and California Air Resources Board helps the decarbonization of the port area. And the Canvas and Toyota and Shell has invested to produce heavy-duty trucks. And this year, LADWP, this is the power. This is the operator of the power plant. Decided to introduce the decarbonization system of summer power from the Mitsubishi Power. And the last example is the port equipment. Because hydrogen system is very, very useful when we control the heavy duty systems, and so the Toyota Tsusho and the Toyota has supported the decarbonization of the port at this moment. And Japan is also leading the discussion of the hydrogen energy. And this is examples of the hydrogen diplomacy of Japan. And in Japan, hydrogen energy minister meeting has been hosted by the Japanese government, and not only European countries but also Asian countries also join this meeting. And I think that I privately believe that the recent trend of the hydrogen has a relevant relation with this discussion, which has been led by our hydrogen energy minister meeting. So this is a very small items. This is my personal point of view for the California. I think there are three items to be discussed to promote the further instrument and deployment of the hydrogen. Well, one is the hydrogen strategy. Currently, I think if I understand correctly, I think the California, also California is very enthusiastically promoted hydrogen energy instruments, but there's a lacking of the hydrogen strategy. So I think from the point of the investments, promoting investments, I think the strategy is necessary. And in this context, I think the governor used some layout the executive order to electrify all cars from the 2035. And in order to comply with this order, I think the hydrogen refueling stations will be much more increased. Because there's 31 or around 30 million cars in California. It's a so huge number. So we need to promote to discuss the adequate capacity to provide hydrogen. The last one is ensuring the electricity supply while the PSP is just happening. I think the lithium, while the PSP is just happening, there's a huge problem for the people in residents in California. So in this context, I think that the hydrogen storage system could be a good solution for the instrument to provide to sustain the provision of electricity. Yeah, thank you very much for listening. I return it over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sahichi-san. We've got quite a few questions coming in for the panel. And so I think I want to start where you left off, which really we heard a lot of aggressive, comprehensive approaches and actions towards transitioning our systems towards a cleaner transportation and energy system. So the simple question to kick this off, as a panel, what lessons have you learned along the way following those last comments that you'd highlight for the rest of us to consider? We're each taking this approach slightly differently. We're hitting on some different things. What would you really highlight for the rest of us to learn, and selfishly here in California, what we might emulate?
Maybe I can try to take on that question, Bill.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I fully agree with Norihiko's point about the need of strategies. Green hydrogen can be used to power so many sectors, and there are so many synergies between them and so many complexities that it's very, very important that this is studied beforehand to the detail before we start embarking ourselves into investments and potentially generating stranded assets. So these are national strategies that look at a high level. What are the competitive advantages of the country? What are the sectors that could benefit from green hydrogen? What are the competing fuels, possibilities of exports, etc., need to be undertaken before. So that's a lesson learned and something that we are recommending to our countries to take on before embarking on this path.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah. Hi. Indeed, What I would like to say is that what we have seen is that hydrogen is really developing into a bridging solution into the energy system, and there is no one single solution. We have to seize opportunities depending on the energy resources we have, depending on the infrastructure we have. Sometimes there are more distributed solutions which can be employed, sometimes more centralized and move at scale. But what is important is to have a really integrated approach to the energy system, and then in particular to see where we can get most benefits from hydrogen decarbonization. And this is the main agenda we have tried to develop, and our Commissioner, Carrie Simpson, has underlined this several times, and in the cooperation with all the countries and with the US. We need to really find the best options which we have for the energy system to decarbonize and to contribute to this carbon neutrality. And we have seen all this way for technologies, how they have evolved and how moving to the scale at the same time, research, innovation, and standards are becoming more and more important in order to ensure large-scale deployment.
Yeah, I think I first heard it over in Europe, but hydrogen as the Swiss Army knife of renewable energy transition. Anyone else want to take this question, or I can move on to another? Okay, looking here, as the questions come in, clearly we must and are decarbonizing globally for this to ultimately be successful. And it really highlights the importance of ensuring that local, regional, global policies and investments are leading to everyone receiving these benefits of decarbonization. I'm curious if the panel has more thoughts on how to ensure these things all happen together. Again, policies, investments, and what collaboration opportunities we might have. You mentioned some of them. I'm wondering if there are some others people have asked about.
We mentioned several areas of collaboration. Here, first of all, we need to collaborate on technology development on the various applications, but we also need to develop together the markets, to develop the trading hubs, to develop the infrastructure for a global hydrogen market, and all these things are developing. And a precondition for that is to have all the standards, to have safety norms in place, and to have a system in which we know what we speak about, the system of certification, methodologies in which we can agree about how we are going to qualify the hydrogen and to ensure that when we move this hydrogen across the globe and in different locations, we know in what way it will contribute to decarbonization as well.
Looking at these other questions. I think there's a lot of questions, I'll say, about the colors of hydrogen, and point out several questions. That while hydrogen in California and globally is continuing the march along this greening pathway, similar to where electricity started and continues, several of you mentioned, the efforts towards this. And there's a lot of questions on how these, how do I capture all these in one? How do we leverage hydrogen, where it is already? It is more gray and blue, but yet cleaner than traditional fuels. How might we use our policies, investments, and other mechanisms to further advance this decarbonization effort?
I can try to answer that question, Bill. I think it's a great one. We see it with many of our client countries where they have abundant natural gas resources. I think it's important to be able to leverage on the natural endowments, but at the same time, it's extremely important that policies are consistent with the Paris Agreement, and that if a country has abundant resources of any fossil fuel, the right mechanisms are put in place to decarbonize the emissions from producing hydrogen or using that particular fuel. So in case of hydrogen produced with natural gas, it's important to start piloting and using carbon capture and storage so that countries can leverage on that local natural gas, but at the same time, the carbon footprint is rightly mitigated.
Thank you. Well, I see we are nearing, we've actually reached the end of our time, so more questions we can clearly handle or answer at this moment, but maybe this is something we can pick up and do again sometime in the future as we continue the policy series. And so I want to first thank all of you for being a part of this and taking the time, especially knowing we're all in different parts of the world right now, but also give you the opportunity if there are any other closing thoughts, comments, or guidance you might give any of us as we march down this road together.
Thank you very much. Happy to continue to work together.
Thank you. Okay, well then with that, I just want to thank, oh, Fernando, did you have?
No, I just thank you, Bill, and the California Fuel Cell Partnership for organizing this great forum.
All right. Well, then let me just thank again all of our panelists for all the great information. We're working on getting this together to share. We'll make sure all the slides and presentations are clear and clean, and we'll try to get these back out to everyone from our website. In addition to the panelists, I want to thank our other partners, the California Hydrogen Business Council and the California Hydrogen Coalition. And we look forward to more of these going forward. So thank you all for participating, listening in, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.
Thank you very much.